Just answering questions with waptek. Someone posted a rebuttal or comment under one of my videos. I've edited it here to remove the subject matter, and I'm going to read it without what they're critiquing, because it doesn't seem to matter in this case. I'll give a reveal at the end of it. You can probably figure it out from the title of the video, though. Here we go. There are 3 search engines, Yahoo, Bing, and Google. There's more than 3, and Yahoo does actually grab some of its results from Bing or Google, depending on what year you're looking up. And then the person says start page grabs information from Google, and DuckDuckGo gets it from Bing. And again, like Yahoo, they do that, and they also do other sources. And there aren't just 3 search engines. There's other search engines that are completely independent. But a lot of them scrape information from each other to double check to make sure they got it right, so that they don't get fooled by someone trying to exploit them to promote some product that's being sold or whatever. Next, someone says, the news reports on the subject of your video have been purged from the web long ago, and you may be able to find them in archives or some such outlet, and then the person specifies Times of India. Okay. I do that in my videos as well. I will point a link to a Wikipedia article's previous revision, an archive of it. I will point to an archive.org listing of a page, and I might include several of them so you can see how it changed over the years, because people change what they say because they find new information, or maybe they're lying. I also include not just links to PolitiFact or Metabunk or Wikipedia, but I'll also archive them so that they can't change them later to hide that somebody said something at one point or another. I'm rather notorious for finding very specific revisions of Wikipedia articles that have more information. Whether it's true or not, you'll have to evaluate. I also then ignore the Wikipedia article, find out what they got their information from to make that Wikipedia article, and go look that up instead and point you to that. Because wherever they're quoting to make a Wikipedia article, whatever's being quoted to make a news article, whatever's being quoted to make a YouTube video or a Facebook posting that's telling you a lie, I'm going to go find what they're quoting and ignore the lies or assertions or their opinions. I don't care. I want the original source. So someone's pointing out Google, Bing, and Yahoo are 3 search engines, almost like they're the only ones when they're not. One of them actually could be arguably called a scraper as well, and then pointing out the other ones are scrapers. And then saying news reports on this subject have been purged. And I can go look it up at the Times of India. Now, the person then says Bill Gates is an asshole or whatever, and then says that I'm a clueless person. Okay. Now, they have some other statements in here that I'm not reading on the screen here because they're not relevant. The subject matter being covered here has to do with me reviewing a scientific paper that was submitted and published. And all the different versions of it, which there are some variations of it, but I'm pointing to the one that people referred to at the time when they made an assertion about it. And they said that this scientific paper said something. It actually says the exact opposite. And that is the entire video I did. People made a claim about a scientific paper claiming something that it said the exact opposite of. And I prove it by not pointing to the opinion piece on Times of India, which also says the same thing, suspiciously, or the supposedly purged web pages from news sources that also agree with me. I point straight to the article itself, the original scientific paper that I'm reading on the screen. Nearly verbatim. Now, why would someone say I'm clueless by reading the article? They also say, well, again, the news articles have been purged. You can't find them anymore. Or they say something different than what you believe, and you've decided they must have been edited or erased. Or you were told in a Facebook posting or a YouTube channel video or whatever that it said one thing when in fact it says another, and you just can't accept that that YouTube channel with an anonymous name or the Facebook page lied to you, or just repeated something that simply wasn't true, and maybe they weren't lying on purpose, but they're reposting things that aren't true. And this is the part that's hard to swallow. People lie on the internet. I know that's shocking. And if someone says this article at ncbi.nlm.nih.gov/pubmed/1122591873 says this, but it doesn't, then they're either not reading it, or they made an assumption, or they're lying to you. The other name for it on the IJME.in page is articles/polio program, let us declare victory and move on. That's the same article. It's the same scientific paper, or if you want to call it that. It's an opinion piece, basically, by a couple of doctors in 2012 in the April and June Indian Journal of Medical Ethics, which is what that initialism for that page is. That's what's being cited by the person on Facebook or YouTube that lied to you. I give a link directly to what they're citing, and archives of it show that it hasn't changed significantly, so you can just read it directly. And it says this, but the Facebook and YouTube channel you got this information from says the exact opposite. And you can go check whether I'm wrong here. Let me make a set of assertions. In 2011, in India, the number of cases of polio vaccine causing injury that would create polio vaccine-derived cases of anything even similar to paralysis was 0. So what is it claimed in the YouTube video or the Facebook posting? That the polio vaccine caused hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands or even 1 million cases in India of people having paralysis or some other medical problem. The reason this is significant is that in 2011 it showed, because people were still getting polio vaccine, they weren't getting any negative reactions for it. It was one of the first years that nobody reported a complaint. And that's the other thing. It's based on people complaining about it, or a doctor noting it, or a relative or a concerned citizen noting it in the next door neighbor. Literally anybody can make a complaint, but nobody complained that they were running into paralysis from it, including medical doctors, and including, very importantly, the people who wrote this science article. This scientific paper was written by a couple of guys who said, flat out, we don't have any cases in 2011 of the vaccine causing a problem. So you read something on Facebook or out of a YouTube video that said the exact opposite of what they assert, or not. You'd have to go read the damn thing. Now there's a short and long version. The long version, some pages cost more or have a cost to them. I try to point to the version that you don't have to pay for. So there's 2 versions of it. One of them is on the originating source. The other one is on PubMed. Smoke them if you got them. And that was done in April through June 2012. And it was about what happened in 2011. It should be pointed out from the year 2000 to 2010, there were cases caused by the vaccine of some medical problem. I'm being very broad about it. How many of them were there? Well, there must have been thousands. No, there were 17. And again, that's in the same article, the same science journal posting that you're, again, if you're making a claim that's different than this, the source will inevitably lead back to these 2 doctors that made this paper that people are citing and saying the exact opposite of what they concluded and exact opposite of the evidence. This information was accurate as of May 12, 2020, and as of right now, still is. Now, the claim will have some giant number, like 80,000 cases all the way up to 800,000. People just add a 0 on the end, and I'm not kidding, they really did that. Or they'll claim 496,000 cases. Now, what was the actual quote from that paper that you were lied to about? 47,500 cases of acute flaccid paralysis cases in 2011 that were not related to polio vaccine because they'd never gotten it. And they didn't have polio. Again, that isn't propping up a conspiracy theory that you're bringing up. You see, the name for it is a clue. It's not called acute flaccid paralysis. It's called non-polio acute flaccid paralysis, and also non-vaccine derived non-polio acute flaccid paralysis. It has complicated names to it depending on where you're looking at, but it just means anything that acts like polio that is not able to be tracked back to polio because they have to see if the person had polio had the vaccine at all. Now, one of the complaints these two doctors were making is that differential diagnosis, it's hard to do because there's a lot of things that look like polio. It gets misdiagnosed as polio. That was 2011, 2012. It's changed since then, so they don't have that problem as much. Next, they were complaining because people were still getting vaccinated because, again, but they were saying there were so few cases, only 500 or 700 per year of polio, that there was no reason to vaccinate against it. Which I think is medically stupid to say that, but okay. But they said that the number of people who are actually getting paralysis matches the number of people getting polio vaccines. 47,500 cases. And then they had to correct it later because it isn't. It doesn't match directly. Well, that's suspicious. No, they're complaining that we're giving people vaccines at the same rate for something that we're not treating. And their main statement, again, was the cases of paralysis we're seeing are identical to the number of people being vaccinated against something we're not even getting anymore. And no, it wasn't an exact number. And by the way, it should be pointed out that a lot of people showed up with this paralysis before getting a vaccine. In fact, the newspaper articles you might have read if you were paying attention also said, especially if you translate it from in the language that the Indians used at the time, in that language in that area, that these cases of having paralysis were being seen when people came in to get polio vaccines, meaning they'd never had it. And then they were tested to see if they ever had polio, and they had never had it. So they were free of polio, but they still had this problem from other viruses or diseases or bad water supply contaminated with crap, which is extremely common in India. All they claimed is it was an unethical thing to spend $8 billion on something that isn't happening very often and spending almost exactly the same amount of effort to treat something that isn't happening anymore when you could just shift it over to treating something that is happening. And then they made the assertion that these paralysis cases were the same number as the vaccines, and people latched onto it. But again, most of, if not all of the cases they were seeing were people who'd never had a vaccine, which is kind of unusual, it seems, or people who had something not related to polio. Again, this is their assertion, but let's ignore that. Well, you can make the argument that the vaccine could have caused it, except that these were people that didn't have the vaccine yet, so that doesn't fucking make sense. Now, there is a mechanism that could actually happen, but that's a real stretch. And again, people quote this scientific journal article saying the exact opposite of what they're asserting on Facebook and in YouTube. And by the way, again, they corrected themselves. The number of polio vaccine administered wasn't matching the number of people with paralysis because they corrected it a while later. So they were wrong. They just made a simple mistake. Their basic argument was we need more differential diagnosis, more medical help, we need better things to do, and we need to stop treating or preventing polio because it isn't happening enough. And they also made, again, the assertion the polio vaccine was causing no paralysis in anybody. So, of course, what do conspiracy theorists do? They say it's the exact opposite of what they were just told directly, in the news article specifically. Also, another unrelated case, but it was also thrown in, is that people were counting the number of individuals that had paralysis who were coming in to get vaccinated. But let's ignore the fact that they weren't vaccinated yet. It didn't cause anything because they hadn't had a vaccine yet. Anyway, the part of the title is, it was hoped that polio eradication and immunization could be stopped. We could declare victory and move on and treat these other things that are as bad or worse, because they claimed it was worse than polio. So let's review. You brought up, this person brought up me using search engines wrong, and then misquoted which ones do what. Claimed that information's been redacted from the internet, when really it's just saying something they don't want to believe, so they have to believe it's been altered. Telling me I'm an idiot, and I'm clueless, and Bill Gates is evil for some reason, throwing him into this. And telling me to look up the Times of India that actually disagrees with their assertion as well. You look it up on the net and it doesn't agree with you, therefore the internet has changed. Berenstain Bears has to be a certain thing. If it doesn't match what I believe or think, it must be the universe changing. It couldn't be just that I made a mistake. And it couldn't be that you read a lie off of Facebook or saw it in a YouTube video and don't want to admit you were lied to. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with it.